Build a polished wardrobe that shows you stay you wherever you go with Mac Weldon. Use code MAC25 for 25% off your first order of $125 or more at MacWeldon.com.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
It ain't easy being orange. Federal New Democrats are spending the summer politically soul-searching after a devastating loss in the spring election. As voters chose their next government under the trade threats and economic uncertainty of President Donald Trump, the NDP was left in the dust. The party finished with its worst ever election finish. They went into the campaign with 24 MPs and left with just 7. Their own leader, Jagmeet Singh, lost his riding before he stepped down. The party has now launched a formal review of its campaign, and it's released some of the details around the leadership race, which will start in September and wrap up by the end of March. The entry fee will be $100,000. So with the party tattered and torn, where do things stand in terms of organization and finances? And what does the future hold as members look for a path back to relevance while also choosing a new leader to get them there? I'm Cormac Mac Sweeney, and today on The Big Story, I'm speaking with Brad Lavigne, president of Counsel Public Affairs and formerly a principal secretary to former NDP leader Jack Layton when he was leader of the opposition. Before that, he served as national director of the NDP. Brad, thanks very much for being here.
Great to be here.
So let's be honest, things are pretty rough for the NDP right now. Give us a blunt assessment of where things stand.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously, this most recent federal election was the worst showing in the New Democratic Party of Canada's history. So at the federal level, we have a tremendous amount of rebuilding to do. I would suggest the most in the party's history. But as an overall party, the federal party does not tell the whole story. Right now, there's over 200 elected New Democrats in provincial legislatures. We're the government in British Columbia and Manitoba. We're the official opposition in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, Nova Scotia. We also have the mayor of Canada's largest city, Toronto. So, while at the federal level, things will take a long time to rebuild. There's no question about it. But as a whole, there are a lot of foundational strengths within the party, and that currently is at the provincial level.
But I mean, if you have that provincial and municipal strength, why couldn't the federal party translate that into better results? Why has it struggled so much? And I'm not just talking about this election. It's been a downward slide over several elections.
Well, for sure. I mean, if you take a look at 14 short years ago, it was the New Democratic Party of Canada's greatest achievement in winning 103 seats, over 4.3 million votes, just over 30% of the popular vote. That was only 14 years ago. And subsequently then, what we've seen is that decline. The caucus was halved in the 2015 election campaign, and under Mr. Singh in the 19 and 21 elections, there was even more bleeding. And then, of course, 2025 came, and it was a devastating outcome. The party, I think, was unable to connect with the voters that vote for it at the provincial level. That is, the British Columbia New Democrat voter is a much different voter than a federal New Democrat voter in British Columbia. As an example, I would submit that the same is the case in Saskatchewan as well as in Manitoba and Alberta, for that matter. So what we have here is almost two voter coalitions. That is, at the provincial level in Western Canada in particular, we have one voter coalition, and at the federal level, we have a different one, which unfortunately is much smaller. Under Mr. Layton, it was much larger. And I think that that's going to be one of the questions that members who are going to be participating in the upcoming federal leadership vote need to understand. And that is, we are very successful in many of our provincial sections. Why is that? And what is the recipe for success there that we need to replicate at the federal level. And that's been lost, I think, on on those leading the federal party over the last couple of elections.
So before we move on, then I will ask, since there is a review underway, what do you think that will show? What do you think those answers to those questions are?
I've started to participate myself in my local riding association's assessment of the last federal election. Some of the things that I heard was that while people were very proud of the achievements of the caucus in the last parliament, that is dental care, pharmacare, anti-scab legislation, those are long-standing objectives of the party. When it came to fighting the election, there was an absence of the ability to seize the moment. That is, there was an appetite for change in the electorate. Now, also remember that just a few short months before Mr. Trudeau stepped down, the NDP were ahead of the Liberal Party. We were in the low 20s in terms of popular support, according to the public domain polls. So all wasn't lost at that time. The real challenge was faced during the election campaign itself. We did not have a serious, credible answer to the issues that were facing working men and women, working families at that time. And that was, what is your answer to the Trump tariffs? What is your solution offerings for what is facing the country? How are you going to protect the sovereignty of Canada? How are you going to protect the economy and jobs? And Mr. Singh and the caucus did not have a credible answer for that. In comes Mr. Carney, who had no political experience up to that point. The Liberal Party of Canada was very far down in the polls. Mr. Poilievre was riding high. So I think a lot of New Democrat voters were more afraid of Mr. Trump and Mr. Poilievre and felt that Mr. Carney offered safe harbor. It was hundreds of thousands, if not millions of New Democrat voters lent their vote to Mr. Carney. And I want to be clear, what I'm hearing among those candidates who are door knocking in this last federal election campaign, many people would cite that they were lending their vote to Mark Carney specifically, as opposed to I'm voting for the Liberals. And so I think that many Canadians did not see a credible offering from Mr. Singh and the New Democrats and found safe harbor. This is a lent vote, not a permanent transformation to a two-party system, which I think provides some opportunity as well as some optimism among the Democrats.
But those lent votes or votes bleeding to other parties have been happening since 2015. And this last election, the Conservatives have eaten a large share of vote from union support that would otherwise have gone to the NDP, while the Liberals, as you mentioned, took other votes. So how do you change that around?
Well, it's an interesting question about the union vote. I think that it is commonly held belief that the New Democratic Party of Canada enjoys an overwhelming majority of union votes. And while I think the proportion of households with union members as a higher percentage than the rest of the non-union households, we have never enjoyed an overwhelming majority of trade union votes in every election across the country. That was the whole vision, behind the merging of the CCF and the Canadian Labour Congress back in 1961 to form it. And since then, it's been a pursuit. The best offering we've ever had among union households was in 2011, but the tide was rising for all voters to go to the NDP. So union voters were just among those in terms of the Orange Wave electorate. So, worldwide, you've seen that the conservative movement has done a concerted effort, and I think they do it more culturally than they do it policy-wise or economically, in courting the trade union movement vote. That is the predominantly white working class, but not exclusively. There are many people of color who are members of trade unions who have also kind of succumbed to that. Boris Johnson has done this. Donald Trump has done this. Ronald Reagan did this in the 1980s. And we see it throughout the Western world, where conservatives have been attracting union voters. You see it, Doug Ford. But you don't see it with a John Rustad in British Columbia, for example. So it's not exclusive, but there are pockets around Canada and around the Western world where Conservatives have made a concerted effort. We can discuss whether or not this is based on their policies or whether it's based on more cultural connectivity. And certainly Mr. Poilievre is going after that vote. If you looked at his rallies, he would have a lot of younger, predominantly, people in the trades, construction workers drawn to his message. And Mr. Singh was unable to capture that. In fact, we've been bleeding that vote since 2015, as you rightfully identify. But in other pockets of the party, like people like John Horgan, people like Carla Beck, they've been successful. Carla Beck in Saskatchewan, John Horgan, former premier in British Columbia, have been successful in attracting those and kind of staving off those. And what the question, I think, for our next leadership contest has to be is how do we attract those individuals? How do we get those people back?
All right, we'll have more on the big story in just a moment with Brad Lavigne, president of Counsel Public Affairs and former principal secretary to then NDP leader Jack Layton, where we'll be talking about the financial state of the party and the search for a new leader. Before we get on to the leadership question itself, the NDP as a party structure seems to be struggling. I mean, you've lost official party status and the federal funding that comes from that. It kind of means that you're not going to have a research bureau. You only have 7 MPs to really strategize with. There's not as much of a chance to gain traction with no guaranteed questions in the House or on committee. So how dire is the party structure itself right now, and where do the finances sit?
Yeah, well, there's no question that after that election campaign, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be fundraising. But to answer your question, I think the rebuilding will take place outside of Parliament. We have absolutely no vehicles to leverage, to use from the parliamentary caucus whatsoever, to your point. No research bureau, no questions in question period, which then gets you earned media and social media content to attract attention to the issues that you wish to shine the light on. So it has to be done outside of Parliament. So it has to be done within the party apparatus. It has to be done at the riding association level. And, again, I went to my riding association debrief after the federal election. Lots and lots of people came, lots of ideas, lots of energy. And so, my riding association in Toronto is going to be focusing on the upcoming municipal election. Then they're going to be focusing on the provincial election, and then eventually, obviously, the federal election. So, for New Democrats, there's lots of things going on in their community that aren't necessarily the next federal election focused, but you use these other activities to build for that next federal election campaign. So you use the next municipal or you use the next provincial in order to build up party infrastructure and apparatus in order to get there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the leadership contest. Now, leadership contests can either be drains on party resources. They could be long, drawn out and financially draining entities where at the end of the day, maybe it's not an exciting outcome. That would be, let's call that door number one. Or it can be a very energizing, a very good fundraising opportunity and an opportunity to get people excited again about the party. I'm hoping, obviously, that it's going to be the latter. Now, we have some of those rules that have already been established, and I think there's 2 important points to those, which speak to your question about the rebuild. One, the runway. March 2026 is the date at which the new leader will be selected. That gives, just over 6 months. Some people debate, and I know that there were some debates over social media within the country, within the party. We want a short runway. We want a long runway. Well, I think 6 months is a good compromise. Why? It's because we're right now in the dead of summer. Barbecue circuits, people will get up. The formal contest will start in September. I like the idea of $100,000 entry fee, and that's been also an area of a conversation. Some people say, well, the average working person can't afford $100,000. Well, The average person doesn't pay $100,000 to enter. They have to fundraise. And if you can't find 1,000 people across Canada to give you $100, you're in the wrong spot. Now, let's also take, this is an interesting thing. I ran into Don Davies. We talked at Stampede. It's like, to run locally, the New Democratic Party candidate has to raise $150,000, $200,000 just to run in their local riding association. Now try to run and capture the imagination of the Democrats from across Canada. So I'm pleased with the level. It's not too low, and it's not too high.
Just to jump back to the question about the party finances, I mean, in the last election, it took about 3 years to pay off the loans just to run the election campaign. Now you're not getting the threshold in a lot of ridings to reclaim expenses from Elections Canada. There are groups like Reclaim Canada's NDP who are talking about a boycott on donations to the National Party to help out the ridings that actually won. Is the NDP going to be even financially solvent?
Well, the party is resilient. There are a tremendous amount of people, hundreds of thousands of New Democrats across this country that do not want to see the party, suffer. They want their party to be viable, and they want it to be vibrant, and they want it to be relevant, and they want it to be getting, out from underneath this defeat and rebuild. And it will, as we did after the 1993 setback. It took some time to do that. I would call on my fellow Democrats who wish to harm the party in some way by diverting normal already established donations away from the federal party. I would respectfully ask them, to consider how that's going to help us get ready for the next election campaign. We need donations at the federal level if we're going to conduct a professional, well-run leadership campaign. That is the next big thing that we need to accomplish together. And we won't be able to do that if we're diverting resources away from the central campaign, the central party, to local campaigns. I give to both. So I would encourage all my New Democrat colleagues from across this country, let's make sure that the federal party is financially strong and our local campaigns can be strong as well. But boycotting the federal campaign will do nothing but help Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney.
For the new leader, as New Democrats decide who they want, there are a lot of people who've taken their names out, including current and ex-premiers, municipal leaders, current and ex-MPs. What does it say that so many have taken their name off the list, and what qualities does a new leader have to have in your eyes?
Let's talk about the qualities. And we did this precisely 20 years ago. I sat in a pub in Victoria, British Columbia in 2002, and we did this exact exercise, and it led us to Jack Layton. And while there won't be another Jack Layton like him, there are certain traits that I do believe that the next leader should have. The first one is that they should be absolutely bilingual. And I'm not just talking, good grade 12 French or good grade 12 English. The pathway to success for the New Democratic Party of Canada includes Quebec, and to be able to connect with people of Quebec. And, in 2011, 57 seats, 1.3 million of the votes. And that was the orange. That was the foundation of the Orange Wave. They have to be being able to connect with the people of Quebec for a Social Democratic Party to succeed in this country, and to sit out another round where we do not compete in Quebec is, I think, throwing in the towel and admitting defeat. The other thing, the next leader needs to add and not subtract from our movement. Right? There is a sense within the party, within some who are members of the party, some who claim to be Social Democrats, who say that we only accept those who believe in the entire Social Democratic package as we define it. And if you have one thing outside of that, if you don't accept the whole package, if you're not whole, if you are not pure, then you don't have a role within the party. I disagree fundamentally. The goal is to add and not subtract. And third, the next leader of the party needs to leverage the support that we have in our successful provinces and not detract from those successes. That is, we have to get out of the game where our BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all of our New Democratic Party success in those provinces, for example, and the federal party is used as leverage against their success at the provincial level. We should be leveraging the success of the entire social democratic movement and not harming our cousins at the provincial level. And I think that if somebody put those elements together, we could be in some really good shape.
Should it be a sitting MP or an outside voice?
I do not limit those, and I know that now that we've got the rules in place and out in the public, I think we're going to start to see some names. I do not limit the next successful individual, whether they're in caucus or out, former MP or not, or a fresh face. I think that you could find success in any one of those categories.
There are some who are also pushing for merger talks. I think one declared candidate, but of course, they're not official until they actually enter the race in September, is talking about merging with the Greens. There are some talking about merging with the Liberals. Do you see a merger in the future for the NDP, or is that off the table for most members?
Well, I don't see it. I can speak for myself. I don't see it, nor do I wish it. We formed a social democratic party in this country. It started off as a CCF in the 1930s, and in 1961, it became the party that it is today. We didn't form that party in order to enable the Liberals. It was to replace them when they were in government. And certainly for the Greens are not a social democratic party. They are not a progressive party. They are a hodgepodge of individuals, some of whom believe, in flat taxes, and they come together, for the sake of putting the environment front and center. That's great, and they're welcome to compete in the electoral marketplace. But we're not those people. I didn't join the New Democratic Party to become a Green or a Liberal, and I just because things are tough now at the federal level, we wouldn't have had the Orange Wave in 2011 had we back in the 90s joined in with Chrétien and Paul Martin. In fact, it's very interesting that we're at a time where Mr. Carney has signaled major cuts, and it feels like the mid-90s all over again. When the New Democratic Party is weak in Parliament, Liberals have permission to cut the things that Canadians care about. And that is going to be the debate over the coming months. And I hope it's the debate within our leadership race. And that can provide us with that opening to rebuild and show Canadians that you can't trust Liberals.
All right, Brad, I know we've hit our limit here, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your thoughts on all of this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Brad Lavigne, president of Counsel Public Affairs and formerly a national director of the NDP and a principal secretary to then NDP leader Jack Layton when he was leader of the opposition. I'm Cormac Mac Sweeney, and that was The Big Story. You can send us your feedback on this episode or any other episode by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can find us on the Seeker app or on all your favorite podcast players. Please rate, review, follow, and share. Thanks for listening.